while the general objective is the aim or statement of intent, which is almost a repeat of the title of a project work or seminar paper, the specific objectives break down that general objective into specific futuristic statements that the researcher intends to focus on during the study. Now, what are we saying? The specific objectives tear apart the general objective. The primary way to understand what general objective is just to understand that it is almost a repeat of your research title. So that is the main aim of study, that research title. But you have to break it down into specific steps that you take to achieve it, and that is what we call specific objectives. While the general objective states what you intend to achieve in general terms, specific objectives break down the general objective into smaller exact steps. They show the steps you will take to achieve the general objective. So, of course, we all know that objectives are what you intend to do in a research study. They are written in futuristic terms, using to find out, to ascertain, to investigate, to evaluate, to analyze. But the fact is, you need to understand how to split the general objective into specifics, into the specific steps you will take to achieve that general objective. But let's understand this by looking at some examples. I think that's the best way to understand how to write general objective and how to write specific objectives of study. Let's take a quick look at this example we have here. The title says, After School Exposure to Local and Foreign Cartoons by Primary School Pupils in Awka. That's the research title. Now, the general objective says, to investigate after school exposure to local and foreign cartoons by primary school pupils in Awka. Now, the first thing to do to be able to formulate good research objectives is to understand the title of the research work. This research work says after school exposure to local and foreign cartoons, which means this person wants to study how primary school pupils watch local cartoons and then watch foreign cartoons. So when you say after school exposure, it means when they are through with school, when they are done with the day school, how do they watch these cartoons? What do they watch? Do they watch more local cartoons? Do they watch more foreign cartoons? How often do they watch? Why do they watch? So when you start saying these things, it means you've understood the topic. In fact, the topic has one key variable, that is exposure to local and foreign cartoons. So the key variable here is exposure. How do they watch? But this person wants to study dimensions of the exposure. So how do they watch? Why do they watch? When do they watch? So when you're saying these things, you are just writing them down one after the other, and they make up the specific objectives of study. Look at the general objective: to investigate after school exposure to local and foreign cartoons by primary school pupils in Awka. That's almost a repeat of the research title. So general objective is easy to write. Just repeat the title of the research work: to investigate after school exposure to local and foreign cartoons by primary school pupils in Awka. Now look at the specific objectives: to find out if respondents are exposed to local cartoons, that is whether they watch local cartoons in the first place; to find out if respondents are exposed to foreign cartoons, that is whether they watch foreign cartoons; to ascertain what motivates exposure to foreign cartoons, that is what makes primary school pupils watch foreign cartoons; to ascertain what motivates exposure to local cartoons by respondents, that is why do these primary school pupils watch local cartoons; to find out respondents' most preferred cartoon programs, that is in the foreign and the local cartoons; to find out what gratifications respondents derive from watching cartoons. Now you could even go further to say to find out what gratifications respondents derive from watching local cartoons or from watching foreign cartoons. But the basic thing is that in your study you may just need like 3 or 4 of these objectives, but at least we're trying to give you as many as possible so that it will be easy for you to understand how to formulate them. I believe that by now, having looked at the general objective and then the way we are tearing the general objective apart, it's easy for you to now formulate specific objectives. Now let's look at this next example. This person studied influence of selected television cartoon programs on primary school children. Now let's just use this as example. Don't check whether the topic is very wonderful or it's refined, but this is a study done by a student. The general objective of this study says to find out the influence of selected cartoon programs on primary school children. Now, this person set out to examine how primary school pupils watch specific cartoon programs and then the influence these cartoon programs have on the children. Because in this study, this person couldn't have checked the influence without doing a little study on exposure. And that's why if you check the specific objectives, you'll be seeing frequency of study, gratifications derived. That's what benefits does person get from cartoon. And then so when you see frequency, you're talking about exposure. So there are two basic variables that this person looked at: watching the cartoons and then influence of the cartoon on the children. That is exposure and then influence. So you need to understand the title of your work. If you do, then it will be easy for you to formulate the general objective and then the specific objectives. Here, this person simply repeated the title as the general objective: to find out the influence of selected cartoon programs on primary school children. So how am I going to find out this influence? And that is what this person tore apart into specific objectives. Now, the first one says, first of all, let me check the frequency of exposure. That is, how often do they watch these cartoons? So the person said to ascertain the frequency of exposure to selected cartoon films by children. Maybe this person selected Ben 10, selected Tom and Jerry, Shrek, PJ Masks, and all those cartoon programs. But the fact is, how do those people watch these cartoon programs? And then, what do they benefit from watching them? Probably the benefits make them watch the cartoons. So that's why this person said to find out the gratifications children derive from watching cartoon programs. Next, to ascertain in what ways the cartoon programs influence the children. So this is just an example of how somebody thought about the general objective into specific objectives. Here is another example. Now we're using examples to emphasize the fact that you need to understand the title of the research work before you can formulate a very good general objective and then specific objectives of study. Now here is this example. This one says exposure to Emzor Para 1000 Brila FM advertisement and its influence on brand recall. We're looking at two major variables here. Exposure, that is, how do they listen to Emzor Para 1000 advert on Brila FM? And then influence on brand recall. Do they remember this brand? The brand we're talking about here is Emzor Para 1000. Do they recall the brand? Can they remember the brand based on the way they listen to the advert, or based on the fact that they listen to the advert? So this person's general objective says to investigate the influence of exposure to Emzor Para 1000 Brila FM advertisement on brand recall. So you see, it's almost a repeat of the title. So by now, it's easy for you to formulate general objective and then specific objectives. At least you now know the difference between general objective and specific objectives. Now, specifically, this study set out to do the following: to ascertain whether the respondents listening to Emzor Para 1000 advertisement on Brila 88.9 FM Onitsha. To ascertain how frequently the respondents listening to 88.9 FM Onitsha. Now, this second one is talking about listening to the station itself, not just the advert. To find out the extent Brila 88.9 FM advertisement on Emzor Para 1000 brand persuades respondents to buy the brand. To investigate whether exposure to Emzor Para 1000 Brila 88.9 FM advertisement